All right. So those of you that are working, just obviously keep doing what you're doing. I just wanted to continue to record these sessions as we move along. So today I'm going to continue with my big old frog skull, frogman, Loveland Frogman head. I'm going to do a little trim work, just a little adjustment. But the main thing I want to start working on is really figuring out how and where I'm going to attach like the lower jaw here, get that sorted out. And that way I can finalize how and where I'm going to place my own head within this. And realistically, I'm still thinking what I'm going to do is have the jawline match up with my eyesight or with my line of sight, and I will be able to see out of the mouth. Not that you have to even be able to see out of these, but just for moving around the room and such, that ought to be helpful. So what I'm going to do is basically, to make the jaw, I'm just going to make a duplicate of the existing jawline here. So I have some more cardboard strips already cut. They are all corrugated lengthwise and parallel. And like I did for that, taking these lengths, folding them in half. Trying to stay in line with that corrugation. I'll make a couple of these. And what I'll do is I'll start really just duplicating this piece by just doubling up, placing them on. I'll use clothespins to keep them in place while I do that, but that's pretty much what I do. So I'm going to prep some of these and check back when I've got these started up. So what I'm doing here, to make the lower jaw, I'm just making a duplicate of the existing jawline here, the upper lip. And what I did is I just went ahead and I pre-made a couple of strips, laid them directly over the form that it already existed. Where there was a fold, I went ahead and sliced, same there. And then I just went around and pinned these all in place. I've already glued the joints together, or those connections, letting that side cool. And as that's going, I'll go ahead and clip these sides on too. So all I'm doing, just to duplicate this, taking my clothespins, laying parts directly on top of the other. I am a little worried that I've just glued one to the other, but we'll deal with that when I get there. Bend occurs, make sure that I fold the little flaps up and out. Keep going along. And then once it's all pinned in place, where I like it, I'll go ahead and glue those connection points, let it cool, and remove it. And when I remove it, I'll do a little bit of reshaping and reconfiguring because I got to figure out exactly how it's going to attach to the jaw still, or to the existing skull still, but that's a minor detail. Well, no, that's an important detail, but I got to figure it out. So clip these all up, glue this all together, let it cool, and progress from there. All righty, so the whole upper lip is currently glued and is cooling. I just still have to make this very tip peak here. Got all these clothespins, which are starting to take on a really lovely monster teeth thing going. But now I have this whole lip doubled up pretty much. I just got to finish up a couple little details on it. Then what I can do is separate that, which I hopefully I can glue it directly to the under one, and move that down a little bit, make the jaw, make the separation. Then I'll really have the basis for my skull set out. So I'm going to finish doing that. All righty, let it cool a little bit and do a little selective slicing there. But now separate the lip off and so I'm gonna attach the bottom jaw just a little bit lower. Decide how big I want the mouth to be, and there we go. I got a bottom jaw. Big frog time. Swear I'm a professional. All right, I'm gonna attach this after I figure out how I really want this to be placed, and glue it in place, and then I think I'll pretty well have the basics down for what I really want out of this. All right, so jaw is cooling, glue is cooling. I just want this little slit open, just to have it frogman just a little bit slack-jawed. But now I want to, before I can really start fleshing this out, I need to get my cap, mated to my head. So I've been playing around with some different sizing, some different spacing. Plot my hat frame down. I left this little quail man tail hair thing. I just didn't trim off the excess. Doesn't really matter. But I've been playing around with, where do I really want this? Do I want my head like way up here and all of this is behind my head? That could work. Do I want this way more forward? Then I still have to fill in the back here. I think basically what I'm going to end up doing is splitting the difference a little bit, because I am going to build a bit of a back to this head, but I think what I want more of is a big like frog, frog resonance pouch thing going under the chin. So to make that, I'm going to mate my head a little bit more toward the back here, so I can still see just through the mouth, but then that gives me plenty of space to create an underspace here for the neck, for the back of the head, and all of this without really going overboard as far as having to seal it up completely. So to get this more or less seized, like I said, don't glue this to your helmet piece while it's on your head. You will get screaming hot glue mashed all into your hair, and that ain't coming out. So I place this as best I like, as best as I can. And since I have this little flap here, I'm going to just fold this up on top just to help me keep it placed. Lift this off, and I look at where that helmet really mates up with the skull. So now I'm not going to be able to completely affix this like directly. I can't just like glue the crap out of this and get it stuck on there. But I'm going to find a couple of points to glue it to, so it shores it up, so it gets it to stay put. And then I'm going to work on making gussets and such, just little support beams that help hold the whole head in place a little bit more effectively. So I'm going to tack these in place with a little hot glue, let it cool, and we'll go from there. All right, so I put a little dollop of glue up at the top here. I used that little tail sticking off to glue better up against the upper plate of the skull here. But when I go to put this on, it is still real floppy. It's actually going pretty nicely. I kept my line of sight. Obviously, it's real floppy, which isn't necessarily a totally bad thing, but I want to shore it up just a little bit because, see, it's still really flexible on there. So what I want to do is these ridges that I made on the underside of the skull, these really helped keep this plate in place. It's just a little V cross beam, but it really helps. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to attach something from the front of my head plate, so it'll be right on my forehead, and just run that outward to the front of the skull. That's just going to help keep the cap in place, or rather keep it located, the cap located within the skull and vice versa. Plus, it'll just be a little bit stronger. So what I did for those, it was just like I did for the lips and everything else, is a piece of cardboard, corrugation in line, folded flat, or folded in half. I split the end. So little slice there, and I folded those out at an angle. It doesn't really matter. Let's say it's like more of like a 45-degree angle. So when I fold this piece of cardboard flat, these flaps go outward. These are going to wrap around that gusset up there. See if you can see it very well. Those are going to wrap around there. But I also want something that's going to glue flat to the front of my cap. So this is where cardboard doesn't really work correctly, but at the same time, if you kind of push it, fold it, mash it, whatever, it will. So what I want effectively is I want this to come up from this V and be flat. So if I kind of push upwards while also crushing down at the peak, I can get that to flatten out. And now what that'll give me, and I'll move the camera so you can see, that is now going to give me a place that I can both glue these two little tab sides on either side of the support frame inside the skull, but then this flat spot I can glue flat against my support cap. And just that alone is going to shore up this whole thing so very much. So I'm going to glue these in place, and I think that's going to call it for the day. That'll let me really get this to lock all in place. All right, so I went ahead and glued that in place. I let the first part cool a little bit, and then I double checked my sizing. Now it's got this overlap here. That's fine. I'll trim it off afterwards. But I was using that when it's in place to adjust the alignment a little bit, just to see really where this aligned on top of my head. So that's cooling. When that's all set, I'll trim that part off. And then from there, I now have this, my frogman head built on top of, or connected rather, to the skull plate, to this top plate here, that I can then really size out what I want for filling in elements, things like that. So this is all, it's pretty large, but really it sets pretty securely. It stays in place nicely. It is a little front heavy, but not bad. And that was definitely one of the things I was playing with when I was checking my alignment and everything. But I'm going to have some more bits coming off the back, so I'm not really worried about it being too front heavy that'll fall off my head or anything. But yeah, we're in a good spot with that. So let that cool and we'll trim it. And we'll continue that on the next one.